we're back here in with Robert Rooms. He's a custom applicator, a weed wiper that wipes all over Oklahoma and Kansas. And he has an 80-foot Walker 44 boom equipped with a sponge weed wiper on the front here. And we're going to talk with Robert here a little bit as he's wiping about his history with weed wiping. How many years? Well, the first question for you, Robert, how many years have you been weed wiping?
The first one I bought was an 84, and I bought a Smucker, the 30-foot weed wiper that you pull behind with a...
Like an ATV?
With an ATV, yeah.
Okay.
And then we used that for a while, and I didn't... Then we used a couple years, we used a pipe system that was PVC with canvas wrapped, and I didn't like it because we couldn't supply enough chemical to heavy rye like this. It would either be dry in certain areas, or you were always having to, if you fill it up, you'd have to, you only used what was in the container itself. So
right.
You'd have to always, then you have to clean them every night to keep your holes clean, so that it works off a gravity driven system or gravity system. So it just wasn't working on a larger rig like this. So I got.
So Robert, did you when you were using the canvas style, was that on a self-propelled, or was it kind of a pull type? So the very first wiper you tried was the canvas, and let's say if you had a canvas in this heavy of rye, what kind of results would you get?
20%.
Wow.
30% kill maybe.
Versus with the sponge, you're going to get.
Well, we'll get almost all of this.
Yeah.
We're doing here today. He won't have any dock on this field for rye, because we're going to take the rye off the top of this, because we can supply the sponge system whenever we feel like we need to load it for sponges, so you can continuously stay running, keep it wet, keep it moving. And you could never do that on a pipe system.
Right.
You never knew if it was dry or not. And especially wasn't any good on terrace ground, because you might be going across the field like this, and all your chemicals be down here at the end of the pipe, because it doesn't have any containment. This contains chemical every 2.5 feet. And so when you go over a terrace, it's always uniformly wet.
Right.
Because it's a sponge, and the sponge won't be dry in one area and not in another.
What year was it when you first started using the sponge on a self-propelled? Approximately.
I'm going to say 10 years ago.
That sounds about right, yeah.
At least about 10 years ago.
And as far as the plumbing, what we have here, I'm looking right now at the manifold.
We use a John Guest fittings and a manifold system, which is adaptable to whatever width of a spray rig you want to use.
Okay.
So you can use as many sponges as you want, and just manifold it off your John Guest fittings. Any kind of manifold system would work.
These sponges are in 30-inch sections, so you have basically 2.5-foot increments, and you can put them up in sections. Like, for example, in this case, you have the wing brakes in 5 sections. So you've got it split up there where it's solid going across each section,
right.
And then it's you have hinge points where the booms fold back. You could, in this case, on this 80-foot section, he's got 3 manifolds.
Right.
If you wanted to, you could set it up with a solenoid system and have left, right, and center.
Which we got here.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
But in this case, where it's really not patchy on one side, it's pretty much continuous rye.
Right.
You're just going to turn your whole section, your master on-off switch,
right.
on and off, and I guess in a situation where it would be fairly, patchy, if you will. Do you ever use that 3 section?
I have, especially on some of these quarters. Their edges has all got a lot of rye on it. It only might be 20, 30 foot or half your boom, and you'll have to reload half your boom on that particular instance, where you wipe around your edges, and there isn't any rye out because they burnt the fields off or something like that, or maybe some other chemical or something. But there's always a chance that you might use it though.
Sure. Go ahead and tell us what you're doing out here, Robert.
So we're going to wick this field of wheat and rye today, and we're going to take all this rye off the top, so we won't have any dock in our wheat. It'll cut down on the dock and eliminate the seeds, this rye going ahead and seeding. We've already primed it up where our sponges are completely wet, and then we're gonna walk down through here and wipe all the excess Roundup chemicals off these sponges. What's going to happen is that rye is going to hit right here and it's going to bow and flip around this, and that's how come we're going to apply a chemical and probably about that much from the stem to the head. This rye is blooming right now, so it's perfect time to during the blooming time it's trying to make seeds, so it's a perfect time to kill the rye because it's taking up the most moisture from the ground right now. Plus it's going to save moisture that this wheat's going to need to go ahead and seed the wheat out.
See, now we're in a part of the field right now where there's not a whole lot of rye. So Robert is able to turn on and off his boom to get less chemical flow, and it's an on-off method that we're using here. I know it totally depends on how much rye is in the field, but if you have a really heavy field, how many gallons to the acre do you typically figure you'd go through if it's like super heavy with rye on the extreme end?
Total product is from water and chemical, you'd be anywhere from a half gallon to a gallon an acre maybe.
Okay. And then obviously if there's less rye in the field, it's more patchy, it's probably even less than that.
Oh yeah, you'd be down to, small amount. As a matter of fact, right here where we're at, whatever's in those sponges will be plenty for the rye. Those sponges will last without any putting any charge to it at all. It'll probably last 15 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes, which would be probably 5, 6 acres.
Right. And like right now, there's just a small patch right here.
Right.
You'll pick up that, kill that.
Yeah.
Yep. Robert, I know you do this every year. You start down in Oklahoma and work your way up north into Kansas. On a normal year, how many acres do you average weed wipe in a year?
We'll go from 12 to 20,000 acres.
Wow.
Depending on the year and where we're at.
What would you say is his biggest benefits of getting rid of this rye?
Well, first of all, you won't have your dock that you receive from your wheat when it goes to the elevator, and they'll dock you per truckload. And there's a lot of this rye over here would go in as when we cut this wheat. This quarter would go in as feed grain, so you'd be selling your wheat at feed grain prices versus wheat prices, which is probably about half price. So you would increase your, say if it's 30 bushel wheat, you'd increase your price by the difference between feed grain and wheat grain.
Wow.
Which is a lot.
Oh yeah. So that easy. Just that alone would pay for the wiping application.
You're going to gain, well, in the case this year it's $8 wheat, so being 30 bushel wheat, that's $240 an acre. If you sold it for half price, it's $120 an acre.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Wow. And as far as your input cost, I mean, everybody has their own formula of what they're going to mix with Roundup, but on average, you're going to use about 20% Roundup, correct?
I think that'd be a pretty fair statement, yeah.
Ratio. I've heard guys anywhere from 20 to 33%, but 20 usually gets a good coverage for you. And so when you talk about a half gallon to a gallon an acre, you're not talking about Roundup, you're talking about mixed product.
Right.
So obviously if they have a custom weed wipe, they're going to have the cost of that, but if they're doing it themselves, your input cost per acre is very, very small compared to the benefits of it, correct?
Correct, yeah. Roundup RT3 right now is at, let's say, $14, $18 a gallon.
Yep.
So if you used, at the extreme measures, if you use a gallon to an acre, only 1/5 of that would be actual product.
Yeah.
So, that's what your cost would be. Say if it's $15 a gallon, 1/5 of that price would be $3 an acre of product.
That's right. And then other benefits, like you mentioned while we were out in the field there, your moisture is, I mean, you're going to increase your yield.
You're going to increase your yield because you're taking this secondary crop off here.
Okay, so Robert, I got a question for you.
Okay.
I'm a farmer. I've never done any weed wiping before. I'm going to equip my self-propelled with a weed wiper, sponge wiper. And as far as the application rate, how you want to mix it up, give me some general recommendations of what you would recommend to start out with.
I would recommend using RT3 or any 6-pound material. I don't like 4-pound material because you're only dealing with a contact herbicide, and you only got a small area that you can get this on, so you want to use a 4 or 6-pound material is what I like. I found it works the best.
Okay.
And then I use a rate anywhere from 5 to 1 to 8 to 1.
Okay.
And that always seems to work depending on what you're wicking.
Now, if it's heavier like this, do you change your rate, or you still use the same rate, no matter how much?
I use the same rate.
You're just, obviously what you're doing is you're turning it on more often. Correct. And like right now, you're running your pump continuously pretty much, aren't you? With this heavy? No? How, like in this stretch, how often do you turn it on and off?
Oh, I'll turn it on in this heavy ride like this because you see you're almost a solid ride here.
Yep.
I'll turn that on every round.
Okay.
I'll hit it once every round probably.
And what's your ground speed right now?
6, 7 mile an hour.
Okay.
I'll run 8 mile an hour a lot of times when I get everything running right.
Okay.
Something that's comfortable. You want to see that rye hit? You want to see that hit and then bowing. Bowing over that edge. So that way you got that moving really good.
And Robert, you put a little bit of blue dye in your mix here too, so you can see your when you're feeding, and again you can kind of tell how much you're getting on the rye right now, right?
Correct.
Robert's using GPS right now. He's setting his AB line, and this way he can tell where he's been and doesn't wipe the same area twice.
Pump's working because your pressure gauge down here is set 20 to 30 pounds.
Okay.
And you hit your switch here, feeding your line, see the blue dye is coming in.
Right.
See it feed.
Yep.
Feed it for about that long, shut it off.
Which is about 5 seconds, or 5 to 10 seconds.
Once you're loaded, that's all you need.
Wow. And you can drive for about how far before you think you need to turn on? Like in this, we're really heavy rye right now.
A mile.
About a mile before you turn it back on?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Maybe 2.
Oh, look at that.
I've wicked bobcats, coyotes.
You think that was a
deer.
coyote?
Yeah, imagine.
No kidding.
Bobcats, coyotes, deer, turkey.
You are kidding me.
Pheasants, quail.
Wow.
Antelope.
Wow.
Elk. I've had elk in the fields before.
Well, I suppose you better watch out for those animal rights people getting them wiping those animals,
oh,
huh?
Yeah. Oh, they get up and get out of your way.
You know, one of the beauties of weed wiping, Robert, is, you know, even the obviously we talked about the cost being your input cost being very low, but what a lot of farmers aren't aware of is really how low of a cost you can, for example, if you have a 60-foot boom, you have an old spray coop, or you have I know with in this case, this is a front boom, which obviously, in my opinion, in your opinion, is the best way to do it.
Yes.
But if you don't have access to a a front mount boom, you can obviously do the same thing. But one of the questions that's asked a lot, Robert, is everybody has their own opinion of whether it's better to wipe in front or in back, and the common question I get from farmers that are, when I explain to them about wiping in front of your tires, for example, is they're concerned, well, what's going to happen as I'm going through? Are my tires going to pick up that Roundup and put it on the wheat below? Do you find that there's just not enough damage that's done with that, or what's your opinion on that theory that your tires are going to pick up the Roundup off the rye in this case and put it on the wheat? Is that an issue or not?
Not an issue at all, because the wheat that you're running over, for the most part, is not going to probably go ahead and produce. So the wheat that when you do run over it, when it does pop back up, I've never seen any come off of these tires that actually. You're not spraying, so the actual contact that you're getting on this rye is not like a wet. These tires aren't running wet right now.
That's right.
So you're never going to have a situation where your tires are going to run wet.
Right. Oh, another question, Robert. If they, if they're planning on putting this on a self-propelled, what's your minimum requirement gallons per minute that you'd recommend, say, for an 80-foot boom?
You can run I tell you, for 40-foot boom, you can run a 5 gallon per minute pump on there and have plenty of pump to run a 40-foot system.
So what you're saying is, let's say I've got a 40-foot sprayer, and maybe it has say a 500 or 1,000 gallon product tank. Since I won't be using much product, I could, if I wanted to, maybe put a 50 or 100 gallon, just a little, poly tank, and use a 12 volt 5 gallon per minute SureFlow pump or Delavan pump that's out there, and then just use the on-off switch for that, turn it on and off, just like what we're doing here, without having to use your product tank. And in reality, if you're a farmer, you're not a custom applicator where you're wiping all day long like yourself. It's to fill up a 1,000 gallon tank, you're only going to use a portion of that. So it may be the wisest to just use that 5 gallon pump, huh?
Right, you can use a 5 gallon pump and supply a 40 foot system easily, and use your manifold system, and just like what we got here, and split it, and it'll supply enough volume for these hoses to supply those sponges.
Robert charges about $15 an acre to custom weed wipe this field. Now, there is plenty of benefit to these farmers, obviously, to pay him to do that, but there's a very short window of time when he's able to come out here and wipe this rye, because you want to get the maximum amount of coverage on that rye when there's a height difference between the rye and the wheat. So when you look at the cost of installing one of these on your own boom, your input costs are very low, and obviously you can save yourself that $15 an acre that you'd be having to pay a custom guy to come in and get rid of your rye. Robert, another question is time of year when you do weed wiping. Again, we're in Oklahoma, and you wipe all the way up into Kansas. What's the obviously it changes from year to year, but typically when's the season when you're going to have your best success with weed wiping?
Oklahoma will usually start around April the 20th, and we'll wick until 2 to 3 weeks after that. So let's say May the 15th, around the 15th or so of May, and then we'll be in Kansas until Memorial Weekend, and then we'll go to Colorado until about the 20th of June. So,
is that because it's a later season there in Colorado?
Altitude.
Altitude, okay.
We'll be further behind because of altitude.
And as far as if you go out and look at a field, what are the things you're looking for to know when it's the best opportunity or best time to do the weed wiping in that field?
I like doing it when it's pollinating like this.
Okay.
Or any time after it's fully extended, headed, and I like wicking a little bit later than some people get nervous, but I like wicking sometimes after the wheat's in a of a dough stage and when the rye's pollinated.
Mm-hmm.
That way it cuts down. If you're doing your own application, you got plenty of time to mess with it. And that's when you'll do the least amount of damage to your actual wheat crop, because your wheat's already matured. If you did, it's not matured, gold mature, but your seed's already in a dough stage. So, or mostly in a dough stage. So if you happen to accidentally hit some wheat somewhere and wiped it out like in terraces or something like that, it's still going to go ahead and make wheat, because all it did was just cut it off a few days early as far as the drying down period on the wheat. So, I mean, if I'm doing my own, I like doing it later.